There was this little orphan girl, Clementine Shaw, just 8 years old, living all by herself near a river. One night, something she did for a stranger who was limping changed everything, bringing 30 tough warriors to her door by morning and mixing up their worlds forever. As it got dark, she heard a kid crying near the rushing water. Clementine dropped the sticks she was picking up and ran toward the noise. Through the evening fog, she saw a girl about her age struggling in the shallow water. One leg hurt bad as she tried to fight the river's pull. Most kids would have run home to their parents, but Clementine had no one to go to. Her tiny cabin only held memories of her grandma, who died 3 months ago, leaving her alone in this wild, lonely place. Maybe that's why she didn't think twice. Maybe being lonely made her super brave. The girl in the water had dark hair stuck to her face, gasping and reaching for the far bank. Her leg was twisted all wrong, too weak to hold her up against the rocks. Every time she tried to stand, the water pushed her down. She looked scared and in pain when she saw Clementine on the other side. For a second, they just stared at each other across the water. Two kids from totally different lives, one drowning, one watching. Clementine had heard scary stories in town about native raids, kids taken at night, and dangers outside the town. Her grandma told her to stay away from those people, but all Clementine saw was a hurt kid who needed help. Without thinking, she stepped into the cold water. The river tugged at her old dress, almost pulling her away, but she kept going. The river bottom was super slippery with mossy rocks, and she almost fell twice as she crossed the tricky water. When she got to the girl, Clementine saw how bad her injuries were. The girl's leg was all swollen, probably broken, and she had fresh cuts on her arms from crawling through bushes. She was breathing fast, in pain, and her skin felt cold and clammy. The girl said something in her own language, scared words. Clementine didn't get, but she could tell the girl was thankful just by her eyes. Together, they got the injured girl to the safer, shallow water on Clementine's side. Getting her up the muddy bank was tough. The girl who whispered her name was Ayana. When Clementine shared her own name, couldn't put any weight on her. Hurt leg. Tiny Clementine had to half-carry, half-drag Ayana up the steep hill to the cabin. By the time they reached the wooden door, both girls were super tired and soaking wet. Clementine's grandma left some basic medical stuff, and she used it to clean Ayana's cuts and make a splint from sticks and torn cloth. Ayana stayed tough, only flinching when Clementine fixed her broken bone. As the night got darker around the little cabin, Clementine shared her small dinner of cornbread and berries. They sat by the fire's glow, two lonely kids from different worlds, talking with hand signs and kindness. Ayana's fever went down, and she looked a bit better. But Clementine couldn't know, as she tucked Ayana into the cabin's only bed, that Ayana wasn't just lost. She was the daughter of Chief Running Bear, the leader of a powerful tribe, and 30 of his best warriors were looking for her since she went missing 2 days ago. They followed her trail right to Clementine's cabin. As Clementine fell asleep, on the hard floor, wrapped in her grandma's quilt, she didn't hear the sound of horses getting closer. The first light of morning came through the cabin's only window, but it wasn't the sun that woke Clementine. It was the sound of tons of horses surrounding her house, like thunder shaking the ground. Her heart raced as she saw them through the cracks in the walls. Warriors on horses, their faces serious in the early light. Feathers moved in their hair, and their weapons shone. They circled the tiny cabin, blocking every way out. 30 of them, just like the scary story said. Ayana woke up, her feverish eyes hearing the familiar sound of her people's horses. Her face lit up with relief and happiness, and she tried to sit up, calling out words that sounded like a party to Clementine, even though she didn't understand them. But the warriors outside didn't sound happy. Their voices were loud and sharp, and Clementine heard weapons being pulled out. Through the window, she saw a big warrior, someone who looked super important, get off his horse with a serious purpose. Clementine was terrified. All the stories about what happened to kids who met war parties, flooded back-burned houses, missing families, kids taken forever. She saved Ayana's life, but now it felt like she'd gotten herself in big trouble. Ayana must have seen Clementine's fear because she grabbed her hand with surprising strength. Pointing to herself and the door, Ayana made it clear she'd explain what Clementine did. But would they listen, or did they already think Clementine's kindness was something bad? The sound of footsteps got closer, slow and steady. She heard serious voices talking in their language, some sounding angry. Ayana got up, leaning on the wall despite her hurt leg, ready to face her people. She looked at Clementine with eyes that seemed way older than 9. Both girls knew everything would change when that door opened. A loud knock came, 3 hard taps that shook the cabin. But it wasn't the angry banging Clementine expected. It was calm, almost polite, like they were asking to come in. Still, Clementine's hand shook as she reached for the latch, knowing her next move would decide if she'd live to see another day in this wild place she called home. When the door opened, she saw the biggest man ever. Chief Running Bear was almost 7 feet tall, his wide shoulders blocking the morning light. War paint marked his face in cool patterns, and his dark eyes showed he was a leader in battles and big moments. But those eyes softened when he saw Ayana. He said one word, like her name, full of relief. And Ayana answered with a bunch of words in their language, pointing to Clementine, her bandaged leg, the splint, and the empty bowl from their shared meal. Clementine stood still in the doorway, barely reaching the chief's chest as more warriors gathered behind him. Their faces were hard to read, but she felt them looking at everything. The medical supplies on the table, the bloody cloth from Ayana's cuts, how Ayana stood carefully on her hurt leg. As Ayana kept talking, the tense air started to calm down. The chief's face went from serious to almost amazed. He looked between his daughter and the small white girl, who clearly spent the night helping her. Other warriors leaned in to hear Ayana's story, and Clementine heard her own name said a few times. Each time Ayana said, "Clementine," she touched her heart and pointed to her rescuer with thanks. The big moment came when Ayana showed what happened at the river. Even with her pain, she acted out falling in the water, how Clementine jumped in to help, and their slow trip to the cabin. When she showed the medical care, lifting her splinted leg, she spoke with so much feeling that tears came to her eyes. Chief Running Bear listened closely, his tough face getting thoughtful. When Ayana finished, he looked at Clementine for a long time, studying this tiny girl who risked herself for a stranger. Then he did something shocking, even to his warriors. The great chief knelt down to her level and spoke in slow, clear English. "You saved my heart." He put his hand on his chest, then pointed to Ayana. "My daughter, my heart, you save." The warriors looked stunned. Their chief, who never bowed to settlers and fought to protect their land, was kneeling to a kid. But what he said next would change Clementine's life and how 2 worlds, long at war, got along. He pulled something from a pouch that made his warriors gasp. A medallion carved from special stone, hung on braided horsehair, with symbols that told an old story of protection and honor. "This," he said slowly, "belonged my father, his father before, many generations." His English was careful, each word heavy. "Only give to family, to blood." Ayana's eyes got huge, and she spoke fast to her dad, sounding shocked or arguing. But the chief raised his hand to quiet her, his choice clear. "You have no family," he said, looking into Clementine's eyes. "We have no daughter like you, but heart knows truth, spirit knows kindness." He paused, finding words. "You are sister to Ayana now, daughter to Running Bear." The medallion felt warm in Clementine's hands as he put it around her neck. The air changed, and the warriors, who seemed scary before, now looked at her with respect. But the chief wasn't done. "Alone is dangerous," he said, pointing to the lonely cabin. "Winter comes soon. No family to help, no protection." He stood tall, his decision made. "You come with us. Learn our ways. Ayana, learn your ways. Both daughters now." Clementine's head spun. Everything she knew, her cabin, her grandma's memory, the river, was being traded for something totally new. The fear of leaving her past fought with the terror of another winter alone, living off whatever she could find. Ayana got up and took Clementine's hand, saying softly in mixed English and her language, "Come, sister. Safe, warm family." The word family hit Clementine hard. She hadn't belonged to anyone since her grandma died. The loneliness she'd carried for months felt too heavy now with this offer of a new family. But doubts crept in. What would the tribe think of? A white kid? Would she fit in or always be an outsider? Would she ever see another white person or her old life again? Chief Running Bear saw her worry. "No choose now," he said kindly. "Time to think." But he looked at the empty cabin, seeing a kid struggling alone. "We not wait for decisions." A cold wind blew through the open door, smelling like snow from far-off mountains. Clementine shivered, remembering last winter's struggles, even with her grandma. The chief stepped back, giving her space, but his next words chilled her. "Other dangers come soon. Soldiers look for Ayana's trail. Find tracks to cabin. Better not be here when they come." The warning about soldiers scared her stiff. She'd heard about cavalry patrols who thought any contact with natives was trouble. If they found out she helped Ayana, they wouldn't ask questions. "How? How long?" Clementine whispered. A warrior spoke fast to the chief, who looked worried, then turned to her. "Sun high today," he said, pointing up. "Maybe sooner." The truth hit her like the river's current. Stay and face soldiers who'd see her kindness as betrayal, or leave everything for a strange new world. Ayana squeezed her hand, feeling her struggle. Despite her pain, Ayana limped to Clementine's stuff, her grandma's quilt, a wooden doll, a few books, and a tin with her grandma's ring. Ayana started packing them, talking softly to her dad. The chief nodded, and two warriors helped pack her things gently. "You bring grandmother's spirit," he said, watching them wrap the quilt. "Honor ancestors. We understand this." Relief mixed with a new fear. What if she couldn't learn their ways or fit in? For the first time, Chief Running Bear smiled, his face turning warm. "Ayana could not walk river alone," he said. "You teach her strength. She teach you belonging. Both learn together." Distant hoofbeats echoed, still far but coming fast. The warriors tensed, hands on weapons. The chief's smile faded. "Soldiers," he said seriously, "time to choose is now." Clementine looked around her cabin one last time, at the table where her grandma taught her to read, the fireplace where they shared quiet nights, the window showing the river where her new life started. Then she looked at Ayana, full of hope and friendship, at Chief Running Bear, who offered her a family, and the warriors who accepted her. The hoofbeats got louder. She touched the medallion, feeling its warmth. Then she decided, changing two worlds. "I'm ready." The warriors moved fast. In minutes, her stuff was packed on horses, and a kalmar was brought for a kid who'd never ridden. Chief Running Bear lifted Clementine onto the horse like she was nothing, then helped Ayana up behind her. "Hold tight to sister," he said. "She keep you safe on horse. You keep her safe in heart." As they left, Clementine looked back at her cabin. The morning sun made it glow gold, and for a moment, she imagined her grandma in the doorway, nodding at her choice. The warriors moved quietly along deer trails through thick woods and hidden streams, protecting the girls with scouts ahead and behind. Chief Running Bear checked on them often, watching for danger. But Ayana was Clementine's rock, though scary. First hours, staying steady despite her hurt leg, giving soft words when Clementine felt overwhelmed. She pointed out cool stuff, an eagle's nest, a singing waterfall, a meadow with wild horses. "My people," Ayana said carefully in English, "travel these paths many seasons, safe paths, protected paths." The deeper they went, the more Clementine saw this wasn't empty land like settlers thought. It was home to people who knew every stream, trail, and healing plant. At noon, they reached a ridge with a view that stole her breath, a hidden valley, with a clear river, grasslands, and teepees. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and people did daily tasks. Kids played, women made beadwork, men cared for horses. "Home," Ayana whispered, full of joy. But as they rode down, people stopped to stare. Word of the white kid had spread, and some looked curious, others worried or suspicious. Older women talked fast, pointing at Clementine like they were debating. Chief Running Bear rode ahead to talk to tribal leaders by the biggest teepee. There, talk was short but serious, with glances at Clementine. She couldn't understand but felt the tension. The chief came back and helped the girls off the horse. The whole tribe circled them, curious and waiting. "My people must hear the story," Running Bear said. "Must understand why white child wears sacred medallion. Must decide if village accepts new daughter." Clementine's heart raced, knowing her and maybe Ayana's fate depended on this. The chief spoke to his people with a voice full of importance, telling how his daughter was lost, how a small white girl saved her, how her kindness connected two fighting worlds. Ayana stepped up, her voice strong despite her leg, talking about Clementine's bravery at the river, her care all night, and finding a friend where she expected fear. An old woman with silver hair and a wise face spoke thoughtfully, her words carrying weight. The debate was polite but deep-some worried. About a white kid in dangerous times. Others talked of old rules about helping kind people. But a tiny voice changed everything. A boy, maybe 6, walked to Clementine, looked up with big eyes, and said something that hushed everyone. The chief translated, his voice full of feeling. He says, "She has the same sad eyes as me. When my mother went to the spirits, sad children should not be alone." The old woman, grandmother singing bird, touched the medallion on Clementine's chest and spoke warmly. The chief translated, "She says, the spirits sent you to save Ayana because they knew we needed to save you. Too, she says, a child brave enough to save a stranger is a child worthy of our protection." The crowd cheered and welcomed her. Women brought clothes and food. Kids came with shy smiles, and men nodded respect. As the sun set, Clementine sat by a fire with Ayana, surrounded by a huge family. The medallion glowed, showing more than honor a promise of belonging. The lonely cabin felt like another life. In this place where two worlds became friends, both girls found more than safety. They found home. Under the stars, Clementine whispered, thanks to her grandma's spirit, knowing the best adventures start with a simple kind act. If you like this story, click the video on your screen to see another cool tale about bravery and kindness, making amazing friendships in the wild frontier. Don't forget to subscribe and maybe send a super chat to help us share more stories like this.